everybody. I'm Montana Wilson, the program manager here at the Children's Advocacy Center. Thanks for coming for our panel. The purpose of this is to provide education for parents and caregivers when it comes to the digital age.
My name is Josh Harrell. I work for the Bartow County Sheriff's Office. I work in investigations. I do crimes against children. I'm also part of the GBI's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
My name is Jim Reeves. I work for Homeland Security as a special agent. My duties are to investigate transnational crimes. We do anything from human smuggling to child exploitation cases.
All right, hey, I'm Maria Davis. I am school social worker and homeless liaison for Cartersville City Schools.
My name is Renee Green. I am a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and I am currently assigned to our Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit, which we call our HEAT unit.
And I'm Amanda Tant. I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy and Prevention with Advocates for Children, and I'm going to be the moderator and ask questions to our expert to, like Montana said, to provide education to caregivers and parents. All right, so I'm going to start. Anybody feel free to jump in and answer if you have knowledge on the topic. Let's talk a little bit about internet safety. Talk about dangerous things to look for, how to protect kids on the internet. Talk a little bit about that. Renee?
Nope. So the problem with the internet is that we used to talk to our kids about, don't take candy from strangers, don't talk to strangers on the street. Well, the reality is now with all the social media and the apps that are out there, the strangers are already kind of in our house, is what we like to say. So when it comes to internet safety, the number one thing I can tell parents is you've got to be involved. Most of these apps on websites will tell you, or that you download, they will have age requirements. Those age requirements are there for a reason. If you are going to let your child get on Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat or whatever it may be, my number one piece of advice there is if you're going to allow your child to have it, then you need to have it too. And you need to know how it works. So you need to get on there and you need to monitor your children and what they're doing. Take it a step further, not only monitor what your children are doing, but go follow their friends, see what their friends are doing, because that's the easiest way to keep your kids safe. But you got to talk to them about the dangers because they really don't understand exactly what can get them in trouble because they feel safe being behind a computer or a cell phone and thinking, hey, this is no big deal, I'm just talking to a friend or somebody that I met online. It's not somebody that I'm ever going to meet face to face. When again, a lot of these kids will take it a step further, or these predators can take it a step further and try to find these kids or locate these kids through social media.
So Josh and Jim, talk a little bit about the apps and the things that should be a concern to parents.
A lot of the apps that we're seeing issues with right now, Snapchat is a big one, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok I'm sure is about to start taking off with exploitation and things like that. Like Renee said, to piggyback off that, you need to, if your children are going to have these apps, you need to have them also know how they work because a lot, especially with Snapchat, messages delete, and so the children think, okay, once it's deleted, it's not there anymore. But the problem with that is if they send images or anything like that, personal information, these people can screenshot it and repost it or upload it to other areas, and it's out there forever. There's no way to get those images back. So you need to have their passwords, check it regularly, and know how those apps do work.
So somebody talk about like the hidden apps, how kids can put things on their phone that you don't know is an app.
So to talk a little bit more about what Josh mentioned, the apps, there's also Kik, it's a very common app. Discord is very popular right now. Also Wicker. They're very popular gaming apps where kids talk about games, but they also use it for other purposes as far as chat and sharing pictures. There's also hidden apps. There's a calculator app. If you see your child might have 2 calculators on his phone, it'd be a good time to ask questions. If the calculator app does not look like what's on your phone, a lot of times that is an app that you can hide pictures and videos in, and it's password protected.
So there's a lot of hidden photo vault apps as well, which we see a lot with our sextortion or sexting cases. So again, just monitor your kids' phones, make sure you have the passcodes to that. And I completely understand for you parents that may have older age children, 16 or 17, and you're trying to give them a little bit of leeway and say that I trust you. We always tell parents if you're gonna go that route, tell those children, hey, I need access to your accounts. I need your passcodes. Put them in an envelope. I'll keep it sealed. I won't go into that envelope unless something bad was to happen. Because it is a fine line, especially when you have older teenagers. But again, I think it comes back to really just talking to your kids. But the thing parents need to remember is that it's not only, and we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot about the child exploitation side, but with these apps comes cyberbullying, and that's another huge issue that we're seeing with our kids, in particular with our middle schoolers. But the things that parents need to really focus on is that those that are trying to exploit our kids or that are trying to hurt our kids, they're going to go where the kids are. So whatever app your child may be on, and a lot of people think, take apps such as Pinterest. I love Pinterest. I would have never thought anything bad would have happened on Pinterest. But unfortunately, we've received cyber tips through our child exploitation unit where people are being exploited and they're sharing images of child sexual abuse material on Pinterest. So just any app that's out there, parents will call and say, tell me what app is safe. And I kind of laugh and say none of them because your kids are going to be on these, your predators are going to be on these. They're going to go where the kids go. So you just got to take it upon yourself to make sure that you're involved and you're trying to watch as best you can with what they're doing.
And are there apps that parents can put on their phones to watch their kids' phones and apps?
So we don't ever advocate one particular app, but I know a lot of my parents' friends will use Life 360, especially if your kids are driving or riding with kids that are going to be driving, because it'll also tell you when they're going over the speed limit, which a lot of parents like. But through a quick Google search, you can find all different kinds of apps that are out there that's going to tell you, what's going to fit your needs. I believe there's some apps out there that will literally kind of mirror your child's phone, so every time they send a text message, you'll get a copy of that. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want a text message every time my kid sends a text message because you would just be inundated as much as these kids talk, because they don't do a lot of face-to-face interaction as much anymore. So it depends on what you're looking to monitor. But there are apps other than the Life 360 app that will send you weekly updates or daily updates. They'll also tell you about their screen time, or you can go on their phones and check their screen time. And I'm sorry, I bounce around a lot, but things come to me as I'm talking. The other number one piece of advice that I always tell parents when it comes to cell phones, tablets, computers, whatever your kids have, when it comes time for them to go to bed, take those devices out of their bedroom. There is absolutely no reason for them to have it in their bedrooms, and we always give our kids cell phones, especially at a much younger age these days, because we like to think, hey, I want them to be able to reach me if something's wrong. I want to know that they're safe. Well, at night, when they're home with you guys, they're in the bedroom, they're safe. So take those devices out, take them in your room, plug them and charge them up in there so that those kids don't have access at night. And that's from the exploitation side as well as the cyberbullying side. And it actually gives these kids a break from just staring at their phone the whole time.
So how do you report something that you find on your child's phone?
One of the big mistakes that parents make are trying to move images to a different device or deleting them and then filing a report. If you find something that's questionable on your child's device, immediately notify law enforcement. The patrol officers can come out, we can take a report, they can collect that device, enter it in evidence, and then what we can do with it from there, we can do forensic analysis on it. A lot of times we can send off search warrants to whatever app they were using. We can get subscriber information a lot of times, and then we can continue the investigation that way. Like I said, a lot of the times the parents kind of just panic and delete it, or completely reset the device, and a lot of times it's a lot harder for us to recover that information then. So as soon as you see something questionable, please call 911, file a report, and then we can go from there.
And depending on the severity of what you're seeing too, and to kind of piggyback off Josh, if you do see images on your phone that you think someone has sent your child that could be child sexual abuse material, or that your child has maybe sent to someone else, don't take pictures of it, don't email it to yourself, don't text it to somebody else to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, because unfortunately what you do when you're doing that is you're distributing child sexual abuse material. But like Josh said, you want to make sure that you preserve that. So my number one piece of advice would be always call law enforcement. But another option, if you want to report, if you're online and you see something suspicious, you can report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have what's called a cyber tip line, and you can go on there, you can call them, or you can do it from your computer. And you can also report there anonymously if you need to.
Okay, do y'all have anything else about that topic before we move on to another?
Just to stress, it's very important. Don't delete. Don't mess with the phone. Just leave it as is.
So let's talk a little bit about the school. Maria, about concerns that you see in the school, different safety issues in the school. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, safety issues, can you maybe we should narrow the scope.
Well,
some,
I
because
think
that's
we
like-
should talk about a few different things.
Okay.
Bullying,
Sure.
school shootings,
Sure.
and then I know the schools also run into trafficking. Middle schools have had, older people try to come into the schools and
Sure.
things like that. So talk about kind of those topics.
Sure. So whenever there is a concern of bullying in the school system, administration takes that very seriously, and we certainly they take action to mitigate the situation, to remedy it. Whenever there's a concern about possible sexual abuse or sex trafficking, we notify law enforcement immediately. Another thing you mentioned was
School shootings.
yeah, school shootings. So thank goodness that has not come up, but if that was to happen, we would absolutely immediately contact law enforcement. Our schools, though, as far as safety, all the doors are locked at all times. You have to check in at the front desk to go into the schools. You have to show ID to get into the schools. You have to be on the child's list to visit them at the school. So we try to take every precaution we can to keep everyone safe.
So talk about law enforcement, what you guys do to partner with the school, how y'all respond and things like that.
Generally, if there's an incident at the schools that was reported through the schools, say there's a child that has sent an image in, say, a Snapchat group, that's a lot of what we're dealing with right now. We've had the children tell other teachers, they then contact us. We'll generally either send a patrol officer out or we'll go out ourselves. We'll take the initial report, we'll set up forensic interviews here at the CAC, try and figure out why this image was sent. Did somebody reach out to these people on Snapchat and ask them for these images, or did they just share it just because they thought it would be funny or taboo or whatever? And then we can continue our investigation from there, trying to educate the parents more on internet safety and being involved in their children's online activities, and go from there.
Sure, and that actually brings up a really good point as far as like online. As you know, we went to CVA this year, which is Cartersville Virtual Academy. County did too. A lot of the systems did because of COVID. And so the system has, distributed laptops, computer devices to all these kids. And so those apps, that they can communicate with are monitored, many are blocked to ensure their safety. And if something does come up that is questionable, they're able to intervene.
That's good.
And I would say when you're talking firewalls, again, the thing that we've got to remember is, unlike us, our kids have grown up with a cell phone or a tablet from the time that they were little. And so they know their way around this technology a lot more than parents. And I think a lot of parents or some grandparents that are raising their grandchildren find this very intimidating because they don't quite understand. So you can put stuff on your kids' phones or their tablets or their computers to try to keep them safe or to make sure that they're not doing anything that they're supposed to. But again, these kids, most of them are smart enough to get through firewalls and backdoor, and they know ways around it. So that's why I think it's so important, just like you would talk to your kids about don't take candy from a stranger, don't do drugs, don't drink, things like that. We fail to talk to them about internet safety because we just don't realize, what is truly capable of being in our homes and being in our kids' hands. So I think just like you have an open communication about those other things, you need to have an open communication about internet safety and about the dangers that are out there.
So I know that I've seen on the internet people screenshot that somebody posts on Snapchat that there's going to be a school shooting tomorrow. So what should parents do when they see things like that?
Immediately contact law enforcement. Contact law enforcement and let the school administrator know so that we can take action to keep everyone safe.
So Montana, tell us about the Child Advocacy Center and how it responds to some of these issues.
So the CAC serves as the site for forensic interviews, which is just a conversation with the kid. It's always video and audio recorded, and it's done in a child-friendly way. So we partner with essentially all of the people sitting here, and we intervene in these situations, talk to the kid, and kind of find out what's going on, what's happening. We talk to kids that are victims of all different kinds of abuse or maltreatment, specifically internet crimes or internet safety. The biggest thing that I have to add is that, to kind of go off what Renee was saying, is it's not just about strangers on your social medias, on Snapchat, Instagram. It's about the people that you know, the people that you go to school with. Anything you do or say can be screenshotted by one of those people that you thought you trusted, and then come back and it ends up being a crime, essentially. We see a lot of that here. I've talked to a lot of kids who are victims of their personal information or pictures they may have taken being put on someone else's social medias.
So let's talk about trafficking. I know there's several of y'all that could talk about that, but talk about, first let's talk a little bit about the definitions of trafficking and what that is, human trafficking, child sex trafficking, what the differences in those are.
So there's different forms of trafficking. I guess the two most common that we work or that we refer to in our agency is sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Specifically, I think we deal with more sex trafficking because labor trafficking seems to be a little more underreported than we know that's occurring. So with the sex trafficking, the GBI, we work, in my unit specifically, the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit, we focus on adult sex trafficking and then labor trafficking of adults and minors. Now, our child exploitation and computer crimes, they focus on the child sex trafficking aspect. The biggest thing with human trafficking is, I think, when you hear the words human trafficking, people immediately start thinking of Taken. Of the movie, or international trafficking, which definitely occurs, and Jimmy can speak more to that. But domestically, more of what we're dealing with is not your kids that are getting snatched up in the Walmart parking lot and just taken to another county or another country and forced into sex slavery. More often than not, the sex trafficking that we encounter is going to be done by a trusted family member, a friend, someone the kid knows, or someone that they've met online through one of these apps.
So talk to us about international trafficking.
So international trafficking is somebody that came to the United States. Sometimes it'd be on a false promise. So for example, they were here to work, and as soon as they arrive, whoever sponsored them to come to the United States would take their documents away, and now you'll have to work because they have no connections here in the country. That could be anywhere from labor trafficking to sex trafficking. It could be, and it could be reversed too. It could be people leaving the U.S. to travel to other countries to have sex with children. That person will be prosecuted back in the United States or where their residence is.
So talk about a little bit about what you see here in this community. Obviously we have things happening in Bartow community, but also Jim, you can talk a little bit about, there are also kids in the Bartow community that have been talking to people overseas and things like that. So talk about that.
So the internet has no boundaries. We truly don't know. It's wide open. You truly don't know who you're talking to. You could be talking to somebody here in the community. You could be talking to somebody overseas. So that's where things get tricky. People deceive a lot of children. They disguise themselves as somebody they're not to gain their trust and to exploit them.
Josh, talk a little bit about Bartow County and the types of trafficking behaviors that you see locally.
A lot of the stuff that we're seeing, like Jim was saying, is online, where these people will befriend somebody online. They'll wind up sending nude images to somebody that they think that they may be in a relationship with. And I know recently we had a case where a child did that, and the person she was sending those images to actually lived in Egypt. And unfortunately, there's really not much we can do with that. So that's probably just one of the biggest issues that we're having right now, is children sending images of themselves to other people who they think are someone their age that they've trusted, and then it turns into more of a sextortion case where the person that they send those images to either threaten to release them, or in return they want money or more images. And a lot of the times the children are so scared to say, hey, I messed up, and tell their parents about it. It's weeks after the fact that we finally get involved. And again, a lot of times there's not a whole lot we can do on those particular cases, and I can't stress enough, once you send those images out, there's no way to get those images back. They're out there forever.
So what are some things parents can look for as far as trafficking type things that they could see on their kids' phones? If, you know, we have parents that live in extended stay motels, what are some things they can look for across those? Anybody?
I would do unusual behavior from the child. Like if a lot of times, you know, they'll exploit the child. Like they'll disguise themselves as somebody else, and once the act is committed, then they'll turn nasty to them, so to speak. They'll say either you do this, or because I know who your friends are, I've stalked you on social media, I'm going to send your picture that you gave me to your aunt, your uncle, your mom, your dad, your brother and sister, and it causes a panic in the child. They'll withdraw. Sometimes the child will even try to pay himself out of it. I've seen instances where you know, they go get mom and dad's credit card, trying to get money to them just to make it stop.
So, and if I can kind of add to a little bit of this, to kind of back up, one of the biggest, another big misconception other than the whole taken and the international aspects of it and who the victims and who the traffickers are, is that a lot of people, especially those that live in small towns or small communities, such as myself, I always prided myself and said, oh, I'm glad that's a problem that's in Atlanta or it's in your bigger cities. The reality is trafficking occurs in pretty much every county within the state of Georgia. It's just people don't always know what they're looking for. So to talk about sex trafficking, to kind of break that down a little bit further, when it comes to your child sex trafficking victims, it gets confusing because the legal age of consent in Georgia is 16. So a lot of individuals, if they encounter a 16, 17-year-old that's, you know, exchanging sex for something in return, they'll think a lot of times, oh, well, that's prostitution. But the reality is our laws say that until the day the child turns 18, they are considered a victim. So they could consent to sex, but they're also a trafficking victim if they're getting something in exchange for that. With adults, it's anyone over the age of 18, and again, a lot of people will see individuals that are out here prostituting. Well, prostitution and human trafficking are two completely different things. Prostitutes are making a choice more often than not, and they're also getting to keep the proceeds of what they're doing. Where with your trafficking victims, you're looking at force, fraud, or coercion. They usually don't have free range of movement. They're not in control of the money. They're not keeping the money. So you may see prostitution and think, oh, this is human trafficking, but you don't really know until law enforcement gets involved and starts to truly investigate that. The other thing is we're given that gut instinct for a reason. And I tell people that if you see something that just doesn't look right or it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, report that. I'd rather be wrong in reporting something than not reporting something when I could have made a difference. So follow that gut instinct, and that's one of the biggest things you can look for. I know we'll talk about some of the indicators, is just if something doesn't look right or it doesn't seem right, whether it's a child victim or an adult, and you see the interaction with the person that they're with, and you're like, that's not normal, then make a report. And you can report that through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, you can report through the National Human Trafficking Hotline, or you can pick up the phone and report to your local law enforcement agency. But the other thing is you know, the trafficking that we see is hidden in plain sight. And it could be as simple as a child or an adult that's approached by somebody that says, hey, I'm gonna give you $25 for oral sex. You know, depending, as you know, if the child is under 18, that can be trafficking. So it's things that in the past we've seen, but we didn't really know what it was. A lot of times it can be considered human trafficking.
And that's something every year we're training our staff regarding child abuse, sexual abuse, you know, physical, emotional. Whenever we're saying the exact same thing you are, is if it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, if you have concerns, if you have any observations, it's always better to report than not. Something as far as, you know, concerns of sexual abuse that we've shared with staff, are these students maybe even living in extended stays coming to school all of a sudden in like a new wardrobe, maybe these new cell phones, maybe some new jewelry that really doesn't align with their normal, like, you know, living situation. And so it's just something that we do keep an eye on. We do want to make sure that we're protecting the kids.
So I know I've seen on the internet about people posting that they're followed at Target or they're followed in Walmart. Talk about that. How real is that? Does that happen? And if that does happen, what should people do?
I'm not gonna say that's not real, because like Renee said, if something feels odd, that's a 911 issue, that if you think you're being followed, for sure call 911. I would definitely not ignore if something doesn't feel right, more likely it's not right.
I know on social media that gets shared a lot, but of the 20 times I've seen it on social media recently, I don't think there's been one report that was filed or an immediate call for service or anything. So, don't just go home and make stuff up on the internet. If you think that there's an issue, call 911. That's what we're here for. And we can go out and try and make a determination from then what happened. Posting it a week later or even an hour later doesn't do any good when it could be investigated immediately if that is in fact what's going on.
I know our agency had worked a case in another county where someone was putting paint drops on the vehicles, and it basically got blown way out of proportion, and it affected several different counties at different times, but it was, somebody had started sharing that the individuals that were putting these paint drops on there had followed people around and said, oh, I think she's gonna be a good trafficking victim. Or if they had 2 different paint drops or different colors, then it means they have kids. And basically it took somebody sharing this online, and then it got shared numerous thousands of times, and it really started freaking a lot of people out. And so our agency got involved, we investigated that, and it was an old folktale from a while back that, it's kids being kids sometimes, and they just thought they were being funny by doing something like this. So again, if you truly feel like something is wrong, always report it to law enforcement, but don't always believe everything that you're reading on social media.
Anything else about trafficking or trafficking type behaviors that you guys want to add?
I mean, just to reiterate, have these conversations with your children. Tell your children to be vigilant in keeping their eyes open. Internet safety, we can't stress that enough, because in what I do, that's probably 80% of what I do now is something to do with internet safety. So just have those conversations with your kids, stay involved. If they don't give you the password to their phone or their password to this app, then they don't need it because they're trying to hide something. So just stay involved and talk with your children.
Absolutely, and encourage them to be an advocate for their friends. Like if they know their friend is involved in something they shouldn't be, encourage them to share. You want to protect your friends, your community. Have those open conversations with them.
And more often than not, I think these kids get on social media or they get online and they start talking with these people because they're lacking something. They're wanting some attention. They're wanting somebody to notice them. And so the more involved I think that you are with your kids, and the more that you talk to them, because a lot of parents, they don't want to bring up, I don't want to talk to my kid about sex or human trafficking because I don't want to put that in their head. These kids are learning things at a much younger age than I think we ever did, and so and these kids, they talk, and because they have these cell phones and they can text and get online, they're finding out things a lot younger than what we did. And so don't put your kid in a situation where they're going to get online because they're wanting some additional attention or they're looking for something. Talk to your kids, let them know, hey, I'm here, I care about you. And also, if you do get online and there's something that happens that goes wrong, kind of like what Jimmy said, let them know that it's okay to come to you and to tell you what's wrong instead of trying to fix that by themselves. We've seen kids that will get online, that will get exploited, but they don't want to go tell mom and dad because they weren't supposed to be on TikTok or they weren't supposed to have a Snapchat account. And then they're like, well, I can't go tell mom and dad because I'll get in trouble for having this. Let your kids know, hey, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, but if you get into a situation where somebody's trying to take advantage of you or you're scared, you don't know what to do, always come to me and let me try to fix it.
So we've talked a lot about how to report things to law enforcement. Just a reminder that anyone can report things to DFACS by calling 1-855-GEORGIA-CHILD to report any types of child abuse that you see 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But talk about the partnerships that you guys have with DFACS.
So in what I do, I'm very involved with DFACS. I have almost every local DFACS worker's case number. phone numbers. Generally, my supervisor will send referrals to DFACS. DFACS in turn sends all their referrals to me. So I have a very close working relationship with DFACS. Generally, almost every forensic interview that we have here, DFACS is also involved in. And same thing with DFACS referrals coming here for interviews. Law enforcement sits through those interviews as well. And it's a very collaborative effort between, what is law enforcement going to do in this case? What is DFACS going to do in this case? And then we also do monthly multidisciplinary team meetings in which not only is law enforcement DFACS involved, but the CAC, the court systems, school systems, all of that. And we can also discuss in those meetings, how do we improve relations between all of us? How do we make decisions to better help the children locally? And they're very beneficial, a lot of information sharing. So we very, very close working relationship with DFACS and all those other agencies.
Anybody have anything else about DFACS and that partnership?
No, as a school system, we also work very closely with them. All referrals of child abuse and neglect go through the counselors, social workers, and the administrators, so that we make sure that we have all hands on deck to support that child. Any time that DFACS needs anything, law enforcement, we do all just work as a team.
For lack of a better term, my sister-in-law works for DFACS, so I just exploit her. Anytime I need something with DFACS, but anytime we've ever called, because we work every county pretty much in the state of Georgia, we try to maintain a good working relationship with our DFACS workers as well.
Well, like Josh said, we get referrals here from DFACS. Anytime a report is made to them, we usually end up talking to those kids. And then we also have a full-time family advocate along with our forensic interviewers, so we're able to assess for needs like food insecurity or mental health services or things like that.
All right, so is there anything that we haven't talked about that y'all think is important for parents to know, for caregivers, anything that we haven't touched on that anybody wants to add?
Maybe I would just add a few more indicators if you suspect human trafficking, specifically maybe sex trafficking, other than that gut instinct. When it comes to our child sex trafficking victims, a lot of them are runaways. And so the thing that you've got to think, number one for us, is not only where are they running to, but what are they running from? If you encounter a kid that is out, again, a lot of people want to think, oh, well, if I see a girl or a child wearing inappropriate type clothing, fishnets, stilettos, short skirts, that they could be a trafficking victim. And I'm not saying that they're not. Kids also dress a lot differently these days than we used to. But take that into consideration, but don't let that just be, oh, they have to be a trafficking victim, because we've seen victims, both children and adults, that are wearing sweats and flip-flops or Crocs and t-shirts. But clothing is something that you can look for, especially if it's, weather inappropriate clothing, if it's pouring rain outside or if it's freezing and they are wearing something that's more revealing, that's an indicator. Tattoos are huge. So if you encounter an adult or a child, look at those tattoos and see what you can get. A lot of these victims of trafficking are told that they can't make direct eye contact, or don't speak directly to somebody that's speaking for you. If you've got another individual that's kind of doing all the talking and not letting that victim talk, that could be another indicator of trafficking. Trying to think, I brought my list. Somebody, as far as depending on how these kids are talking, if you know a victim that is already coming from a struggling home life, again, that could be an indicator. Not saying that that's always an indicator, but something just to look for. If you're dealing with international, and I know Jim can speak more to that, if it's someone that's not in control of their own documents, or someone that doesn't necessarily have the documents, or somebody else is keeping them, that could be a trafficking indicator. Anybody else? All right.
Anything else from anybody before we wrap up? Thank you panel, thank you people watching. As always, if you have any questions, you can always call Advocates for Children. Law enforcement and DFACS in the school are here to help kids in any way, so you can always contact any of these agencies.